So the hip hinge, everybody talks about it. You hear about it in kettlebell swings, deadlifts. People probably mention the squat as well. But it's tough to really understand and grasp what they're talking about sometimes because you can see it on a video and you may even see it in a picture or hear somebody describe it in words, but until you actually kinesthetically feel it, it's tough for you to know what's going on. So an easy way to understand the hinge or to teach the hinge is to use a PVC pipe, a broomstick. In this case, I'm going to actually use the bar from the lat pull-down machine. That's all I got on hand, so it's what I'm going to work with. To set up for it, what you're going to do is place the PVC pipe, broomstick, whatever, on your back. One hand is going to go in your low back, here, and one hand is going to go on your neck. Now, you're looking for 3 points of contact here. You're looking for the back of your head, in between your shoulder blades, and kind of the top of your tailbone. You want to maintain those 3 points of contact throughout the entire exercise. So as you're moving through the reps, if you feel any of those points of contact come off, so if your head juts forward, or you start rounding the thoracic spine, your tailbone tucks under, anything like that, that's a compensation that you're moving through. So if you can't do it with the PVC pipe or the dowel rod, aka body weight, then how do you think your body's actually accomplishing the deadlift pattern when you're trying to move some weight? There's obviously a compensation going on there. So this would be a good drill to throw in between sets, or simply regress the movement to something like a kettlebell deadlift or a kettlebell swing, something which still trains the hinge pattern, but it doesn't load it as heavily and allows you to focus more on the technique of the movement. So, going through a few reps here, what you want to try and focus on in the deadlift, or in the hinge for that matter, you want to actually try and shift the weight back on the heels. So, an easy tip or an easy cue that you can use on yourself is just simply wiggle the toes or pick up the toes. So then as you're shifting back, you should be actually shifting the weight to the heels. It's called a posterior weight shift. That's all you're trying to do. Basically, when the weight is in front of your body, you're trying to counterbalance yourself due to the effect of gravity on yourself. So you have to sit the hips back and shift the weight posteriorly, because now you have this weight in front of you anteriorly. That's all you're doing. It's a lot of fancy words, but that's essentially it broken down. So, 3 points of contact. We're trying to shift our weight back onto our heels and sit our butt back. Sit back, 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 back. And when you get to this point, you should feel some tension in your hamstrings. That's perfect, because now essentially what we've done is we've taken our pelvis and we've tilted it forward, which means we're just moving up the hips. If for some reason you get to this position and you look like this, and you're like, yeah, I don't really feel that tension in your hamstring. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, it's because this guy popped off right here on the bottom, our tailbone bone, which means your pelvis has essentially tucked under and the hamstrings never lengthened. So when we're sitting back here, we're generating length in the hamstring, just like an RDL. You're going to feel a big stretch in the bottom position because the hamstring are fully lengthened across the hip joint. So with that cue, if you're finding that you're constantly rolling under, you're getting into this position, imagine someone has a rope around your waist and they're pulling back on that rope as you're trying to sit back here. Now you can easily accomplish this. I use a band with some of my athletes and I'll actually wrap it around their waist, and so you actually literally pull them back as they're going through the hip hinge drill. Another way you can do this is you can find a wall, you can use a pillar and a squat rack. If you stand in front of it, here, and I'm about 6 or 8 inches away, as I shift my way back, I want to actually try and tap the wall. I'm going to scoot out a little bit. Here, sit my hips back, tap the wall. Step out a little bit. You'll get to the point where you try and sit back, 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 back. You're going to feel like you're shifting all your weight back, and then you'll tap the wall. And that's kind of your end range where when you start to actually lose that tripod foot and you feel your foot come off the ground because you've got to shift back to the wall, you're a little far out. But at that point, you know you're actually shifting your weight back and you're not staying over your toes. Another way, if you still can't seem to grasp this concept, this is something that I picked up from Charlie Weingroff and another one of his associates. I think his name is Dr. Mark Chang, and it's actually called robbing the forefoot. So what you do here is you could easily take a plate, or you could take a piece of foam or a piece of rubber. And what you do is place one under each foot. toes more specifically. And essentially, instead of just picking the toes up or wiggling the toes, now you've robbed the forefoot. So the person automatically, when they're in this position, your weight should be shifted back onto your heels. A lot of people subconsciously don't realize it, but when they're wearing tennis shoes or high heels throughout the day, this is shifting you just slightly up onto your toes. Most tennis shoes have about a 12-millimeter heel lift. So that's great for cushioning if you're going out and running. It's probably not good if you're squatting or deadlifting because it's actually absorbing that force. And then you're getting some tightness up in the posterior chain, and you can't sit back into the posterior chain. Now, so this is a very easy way. Put a couple plates on the ground, go through your hip hinge drills. Here, a few points of contact, sit back, 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 and then you come back up. Now, the thing you have to watch for, given this hand is in our low back, we want to make sure we're not overarched, sitting back, and just be mindful of that point of contact on our thoracic spine, our upper back. So here, sitting back, getting good attention to hamstring, and ideally, when you get into this position, it should mimic your deadlift position. So I should be able to grab a bar here, still having all 3 points of contact, shoulder blades, tailbone, back of my head, boom, grabbing the bar. And once you can move to this position, and you know you're in a pretty good position to pull, you just have to be mindful once you start to load the bar. One last little thing that you can try, if it's still just not clicking, you're not really sure, I don't think I'm in the right position, well, you can simply take a joint out of play. So take the ankles out, just move through the hips now, like going into a kneeling stance. Now, another way you can train this, instead of using a PVC pipe, you can easily grab a band. You can easily train with a band. Now, with this, you wrap a band around the rack. You'll get it set up to about waist height when you're kneeling down, and then step into the band. So, now we have a posterior pull. We've taken the ankles out of the equation, and we're going to go through some hinges. The band is essentially going to assist us back into the hinge. And we can come back up. You can combine it. You can add the dowel here too if you want. That's a little over the top in my opinion, but if you really want to just tie everything together, take all 3. You really get the pull from the band, and then as you explode through, you want to squeeze the glutes. That's what's actually going to finish the hip extension. So now we're actually getting a little bit of a resistance here, forcing the glutes to work. And again, if you just want to use one hand, that's cool. Either top or bottom. It's a little tougher with just one hand to find all 3 points of contact and maintain them. So that's one last final way to really regress the movement and take it down to essentially the bare minimum. Take the ankles out of the equation, only move through the hips. Try robbing the forefoot, use the PVC pipe. Those are all viable options. And if all else fails, take a video of your lift. Ask somebody for advice. Post in the Muscle and Strength forums. I'm on there all the time answering people's questions. So if you guys have questions, you can throw them in the comments section below. I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I hope that was helpful, teaching you the hinge and getting your deadlift on tap.